Hello, everyone. Welcome to Wind Down Wednesdays. I'm your host, Paula Taylor, and this is episode 194. Today, we are going to be talking about grid work. What is grid work? And this is actually one of the perks of being in my online community, which is the Spiritual Awakening Sanctuary. There are two full-length episodes now that have come from either a question someone asked me in that space or a topic someone brought up. The other one was, what is energetic vampires? So today we're going to talk about what is grid work, and that came directly out of something that was brought up by someone in that space. So we would love to have you join us there. Right now it's still only $11 a month, and you get access to a lot of perks that I will go into depth at the end of the episode as well. But we would love to have you join us there. We are growing. We are sharing more and more about how energy affects each of us with each other. And I think that it cannot be overstated how important that is. So today we're talking about what is grid work. And the first thing I'm going to say is that I don't usually use the word grid. And so I will explain to you or kind of go over kind of the word that I use for this instead and sort of why, because words are important to me. But the sort of general understanding of this, just like this idea of 3D and 5D, is people use the word grid or grid work. So I tend to use the word net because to me, a grid comes through as something that's fairly inflexible. Like I think of like ironwork or like rebar that, you put in when you lay concrete to like put up a skyscraper or something. To me, that's what a grid is. A grid feels like something that's inflexible. And when I experience what other people call grids, to me, they feel more like nets. I feel they're organic. I feel movement. I feel breathing. I feel this sense of, again, movement. So I tend to use the word net for what other people call grid, or so I might call it network, I guess. I've never really talked about this before, but it's something that I realized I've been doing for a while, came up in the Spiritual Awakening Sanctuary, and I thought it would be a good topic to talk about today. So let's talk about the types of grids or nets first, and then I'll give you some examples of some pretty powerful grid work that I've been a part of over the last year or so. So there are different types of grids or nets within and around the Earth. And that makes total sense when you think about the fact that the Earth is actually a being. She is her own being with her own body. And just like we have lots of different types of energetic systems in our bodies, she also has that. So we have like chakra systems, points of energy kind of running up along the spine of the body. We have meridians, from Chinese medicine, or in Ayurveda, I think they call them nadis. And these are lines of energy that run through the body. And then along the meridians, we have these points, like acupuncture points. If you ever had acupuncture, they put needles into one of these points along these meridians to open up the energy, to allow the energy to move. So the Earth is similar. So the one that most people are familiar with, or like that I hear about the most, is people talking about ley lines. So to me, ley lines are kind of like the energetic meridians of the Earth. It's this kind of like grid. That's where the grid comes from. Or to me, I think of it more like a net. But it's this sort of crisscrossing group of lines that sort of wrap around. To me, these are more like right on the surface of the Earth. And all along these are points or portals where the energy tends to be more potent. So one of the famous ones near me is in Sedona. People talk about how there's a portal of energy in Sedona. There's portals of energy all over the place. Essentially, you can think of, if you look at one of those maps, like an acupuncture map, you see a drawing of a human body and then points all along the body in all these different places. That's kind of what the ley lines are. They're like the pathways of energy or light through which the Earth moves energy sort of more on the surface of her body, of the Earth. One of the things that I've talked about, so if you've been listening to the show, this might sound familiar, is the mycelial net. So this is the grid or the net underneath the Earth. This is the fungal network that exists through the entire kind of subsurface of the Earth and connects all living plant life, especially through this fungal network. So the trees and their roots are tapped into the fungal network and the mycelial network. Mycelial is like kind of another word for fungus. So this is a grid or a network that wraps all the way around the earth, like under the surface of the earth. This is like the root system essentially of the earth's root chakra, or earth star chakra. You could think about it that way because it's kind of deep in the surface of the earth. And then the one that I talk about the most, that you're probably more familiar with, is the archangel. I call it the archangel net. It's basically an angelic net, and this exists higher up, kind of above the surface of the earth. And to me, again, this is why I call these a net. It's this like net of lines of energy, and the points on this net are archangels. So all around the globe, there are like local archangels that are kind of responsible for maintaining this net of angelic energy. And there's probably lots of others. We could like probably do a whole show where we just talk about all the different types of energy within and around the earth. But we're going to stick with that today just to kind of illustrate this idea. And if you think about, like, there are schools of thought that like we have billions of chakras within our body, that every cell is its own chakra. Like, you could get down to the quantum level here and find all of these connections, and they're all connected to each other. The mycelial net is connected to the ley lines that are more on the surface of the earth, and then all of those portals are connected to the angelic energy that kind of wraps around the earth. So essentially, you could think of this as like the earth's energetic system, this grid or net of energy that's connecting all of the energy of the earth, that's helping her be one big sort of aligned being, connected being. There's a better word for that, but it went out of my brain. So a lot of people talk about, when you see people talk about doing grid work, that's what they're talking about. They're talking about working with the energy of the earth itself for usually activation, for healing of the earth, or healing of people, for healing of people in the area where this particular portal or area of the grid is. And again, I realized when this topic came up, I've been thinking about this a little bit for a while, but it's not, I just don't talk in these terms. But I've done some really powerful grid work in my life, and especially over the past year, that I can kind of I like to give concrete examples of. So we'll talk a little bit about that. But the first thing I want to say is I want to kind of answer the question, like, what is grid work, or how do you do grid work? And this is one of the reasons that I don't necessarily talk about it, because for me, a lot of the work of this sort of idea of activating a grid is just being present, being fully present and embodied in your full physical and energetic body, sometimes with intention, but sometimes not even necessarily with intention. I have two stories about this. One, it's like there's more of an intention, and one where I didn't necessarily have an intention, where there was a powerful activation of the grid or the net. And so sometimes people go specifically, purposely, to places to do grid work. And I think a lot of times just our presence, especially our clear, expanded, and harmonious presence in a place, works on the grid, activates the grid, allows things to move more in the grid, does healing work, brings clarity, expansion, and harmony to the grid. And sometimes people feel called to grid work through travel. So if you feel called to go to a certain place, then that might be because there's something about the energy of that place that's calling you there to connect to the grid or the net in that area. Whether it's for you to receive, for you to give, ideally for there to be some sort of an exchange. And that's why places around the world have very different energetic feelings. And some of those places really call to people, and some of those places maybe don't call to you specifically, because we're all individual. That's the other importance of grid work. Everybody who comes to a place brings something that is uniquely them to that place. So if all of us went to Sedona together, each one of us would bring something special and probably receive something special from that powerful energetic grid or net, especially if we were there with loving intention, with the intention to work with the grid or the net. That sort of amps up the power of this kind of transformational work. And sometimes we feel called to a space and we can't necessarily get there. And that's one of the reasons that energy work is so amazing, is that, yes, it's powerful to be in person somewhere, and you can still work with the energy of the grid or the net in that place without physically going there. you can do things like, looking at pictures and connecting. I've got a story about that as well. So if you're not in a space where you can physically travel to someplace you're called to, it doesn't mean that you're not doing important grid work. And in fact, sometimes the place you're in is the place that really needs the grid work the most. So for the last probably year, especially, but year and a half or so, I keep feeling like I need to get out of Arizona. And at one point I was even like, I think my work here is done and it's time for me to move on somewhere else. And I pulled some cards around this and I got this really clear message: the desert isn't done with you and you're not done with the desert. And I was like, but it's so hot and I'm perimenopausal and I'm tired of being hot and I want to go outside for more than like 3 months of the year. And so I started traveling more. That was kind of some of the traveling I've done in the last couple of years. There's an element of this grid work here of feeling like I need to get out of my own personal grid or net and like into another place to experience different types of energy. And having this as my base of operations is still important. For whatever reason, my presence here is doing something for the grid that is serving the highest and most illuminated good. So sometimes the densest places are the places that need the grid work the most, not the like amazing place that everybody wants to go to, but the place where like you might feel kind of stuck and stagnant. And some of this is a perspective shift. So for me, it was like, okay, if I'm still here to serve the desert, that means the desert is still here to serve me. And I have to open to that service. I have to kind of put aside my personal feelings about like being uncomfortable here physically and kind of wanting to kind of stretch more and like do that in smaller doses perhaps, and then come back here. And perhaps that's part of what I'm doing is like leaving and coming back with like different energies that help kind of activate and move energy in the desert, because the desert has very old energy, which is what attracted me here in the first place. When I first lived in Phoenix years ago, it just felt so settled and calm because I had come fairly recently from living in Hawaii, and Hawaii is literally making new land through a volcano. It's very volatile. And I, as a young person who was still in a very triggered nervous system state, I did not feel very safe in Hawaii. The energy just felt very chaotic. And so then when I came to the desert, I was like, oh, the rocks here are so old and it's so settled and it's so beautiful and amazing. So everywhere you go, there is something special about the grid for that area. And there's probably something that you can offer in terms of activating and then also receiving. So I went to Bali in spring of last year, and the energy in Bali reminded me a lot of Hawaii. It felt very volatile. They have this, their religion really, they celebrate both light and dark, and you can really feel that there. I felt a lot of dark energy there, and it felt kind of like there was like a struggle going on, but it also felt very alive because the energy was really moving, and there's a lot of people coming there. I think probably too many people coming there and kind of zapping the energy. That sort of happened to Sedona, and it was a place that a lot of people are really drawn to that I didn't particularly care for. I'm really glad that I went, and I had some really amazing experiences, and I felt like that was kind of it for me. And there was a lot of dark energy there, and that dark energy started helping me do the shadow work I needed to do to kind of see some of the energy, like the lizard energy and the trickster energy, and some of the things that I've been releasing. There was a literal like snake god in one of the temples that we went to that I talked about in an episode with the water temple, and I didn't go in. It just felt like it was not a space for me. And not that it wasn't safe or that it felt very private, and it felt like it was meant for people who really had a devotion to this type of energy. And that's not where I am. And so I chose not to go in. So that's kind of a quick story about sort of how people go from all over the world. People go to Bali because of its healing, because of that vibrancy, because it really does get things moving. So if you've been feeling stuck or stagnant and you go to a place where things are really moving, sometimes that can kind of jumpstart things. Also, a lot of people go to places just to take. And so one of the big components that's important about grid work is having this intention to give. when I went to Bali, I sent Archangel Michael out ahead of me, or like when we first got there, and I said, go and find the local archangels here and let them know that we are here to serve. Like, we are here to receive, we are here to kind of, not to take, but to receive. And part of receiving is giving. And so I was like, is there something we can do in terms of giving energy? Like, what can we do to help serve the energy of this space? That's all the grid is. It's just the energy of the space in that particular space. And one of the messages I got was like to honor the local traditions by not participating in like going in that water temple, for example. And I was with 8 or 9 other people, and they all had different messages around that. So I think the most important thing when you're thinking about doing grid work is like, what is your intention and what are you there for? Am I here to give, or am I here to take? And if I'm here to give and receive in a way that feels like equitable, that is how energy moves. That is like a free flow of energy. But if you're just there to take, then the actual land, the energy of the land will get depleted. And I hear that a lot about Sedona, where people say, I went to Sedona years ago and I had such a powerful experience, and I went more recently and it just felt really, and then I hear lots of different words like dead, empty, not the same. And that is sometimes what happens when a place gets really commercialized. There are a lot of people who come to just take, and Bali is that way too. And I felt like my presence there, what I was not able to give enough in order to make up for all the taking that has and is still going on in that space. So I think real grid work requires a lot of intention. I think that's a word that people kind of throw around without really understanding what it means. And real grid work is about, again, this beautiful kind of exchange of like, what can I offer to this space? And in return, perhaps the space offers something to me, but I don't go into the space expecting to receive something. That is kind of that consumption energy. That's a little bit of a shadowy energy of like, what can I get from here? And in my experience, when you go in with like an open heart and like, what can I offer you? Then you always receive something really beautiful in return. So I've got a couple of stories about this, and one of them kind of involves this idea of intention and sort of me realizing that I was doing grid work, even though I don't use that term. And then one of them is more like I just ended up in a space, and then this really powerful kind of grid work kind of happened just because I was present. So last November, I went to Cambodia for a sound healing symposium, a global crystal bowl symposium. And I went for a few different reasons. I went because it was a sound healing symposium and I was super excited to be surrounded by people who are also big sound nerds. I went because my sound healing mentor was presenting there. And I went because of the trees. When I looked at the images of the excursions we were going to be doing, we were going to be going to this temple called Ta Prohm, and I instantly, the trees started calling me. I was like, I have to be physically present with these trees. I have to be around these trees. I have to be in this energy. If for no other reason, I got so much amazingness out of all of those intentions that I had. But like, there was a part of me that was like, if this is the only reason I'm going, like, I know this is worth it. There's something really, I could feel the power in these trees. I could feel the depth. I could feel that they needed something from me. I don't know that I had those words at that time. So I got to Cambodia and we were doing all sorts of things. And I wasn't really even thinking about the trees and that excursion. It was kind of later in the week. I was just kind of in this really beautiful energy and meeting people. And the night before we went to Ta Prohm, the trees started talking to me. I heard them. And I heard them through this big, beautiful tree that was in the resort that we were at. I was just walking back from dinner and I heard the tree say, hey, wait a minute. And I was like, oh, hello. So I stopped and I stood in front of the tree, and the tree said, when you go to the temple tomorrow, you need to sing to the trees. And backtracking a little bit, I that whole day and like the day before, I kept hearing this song in my head, and that happens to me a lot. That's how the emerald frequency of dimensional frequency expansion came through to me. So I pretty much have a song in my head all the time, but this was like, felt like a really powerful kind of ancient song. I was like, oh, what is this? But I was just letting it play. It was really beautiful. And so when this tree kind of stopped me, it was like, you are hearing our song and we want you to sing that song to us. We need to hear this song out loud. We haven't heard this song in thousands of years, is how it came through. And then sometimes your conscious mind gets in there, like these trees haven't been here for thousands of years, but the energy has, the rocks have, the generations of trees that grow out of each other's roots have. And so I went to the temple the next day with this intention of like, I am going to sing to these trees. And I will tell you that I had a lot of people-y thoughts about that. Like, I don't want to, was like, I don't want to draw attention to myself. I don't want people to think this is performative. I don't want, there was all of those. I don't know if I'm allowed to do this, which it turns out I wasn't, but they guided me to do it in a way where I was able to get it done. And I had told a few people around me, like, I'm going to do this. These trees, like, I have to do this. It felt like something I had to do. It felt like something that the trees really needed. And I was there to serve the trees, and I was willing to do that. And the gifts that I got in return were so amazing. We'll talk a little bit about that. So we got to the place. It was really hot. It was the afternoon. And I'm like kind of nervous about this whole thing. And like, where am I going to, like, how am I going to know where to go? Because they wanted me to sing to a specific tree. And then essentially this energy that I was going to share with the tree was going to go down into that mycelial network and just like spread through all the trees in this whole area. So I went in and I'm walking, and there was a couple people with me, and they're like, how, which tree is it going to be? And I'm like, I don't know. They're telling me I'll know it when I see it. And I did. And it's funny because someone else ended up, that was kind of, that tree called to them as well. So someone was standing next to me, kind of ceremoniously pouring out water onto the tree, which sounded to me, I was like, is someone being next to me? Because I had my eyes closed. Because I was like, the only way I could do this was to just be in it and like let go of me worried about people judging me or whatever. And I was with a group of sound healers, so it was probably the best sort of scenario in terms of like, if I had been with like a bunch of random tourists, it would have felt like even weirder, but there wasn't a lot of people around. So I went up to the tree and I put my hands on the tree, and out loud I sang the song that I had been hearing in my head to the tree, like loud. I mean, like I belted this out because that's what they wanted. And a couple different things happened that are interesting. First of all, if you asked me what that song was today, I have no idea. I know it was powerful and I know it was loud, and I could not repeat it because it was not my song. It was their song, and they just wanted a vessel to share it. They hadn't heard it out loud since. The way it came through was like there were priests and like shaman, like medicine people who cared for these trees and sang to these trees, and like they got to hear their song because the trees they can make music of their own, but they don't have vocal cords to kind of make the melody of this song. And so a couple interesting things happened. Like if you asked me, gun to my head, like I couldn't sing that song again. I have no idea what it was because it wasn't my song. It was a private song that was meant to be shared with them. And then that energy was meant to be distributed through that mycelial net. Also, somebody tried to take a video of me singing and it didn't come out. And even at the time we were like, whoa, that feels like intentional. And now I can very clearly say it was not supposed to, because that song was not for people. That was the tree song for the trees, for the grid of that area, for the energy of this space. And the gift I got back from the trees was all of this beautiful wisdom about being rooted while still being extended, about allowing your crown to thin out, not to be, because I was having a lot of overwhelm at the time with the energy that was coming in. And they were saying, like, look at our branches. They're spread out at the crown so that there's space between them, so that the energy has like space to move. I communicated with those trees for months and months afterwards, to the point that I was going to go back there and do my own retreat around dimensional frequency expansion. And we were going to go back and spend time with those trees. And then something shifted, and I kind of got the message like, your grid work in this space is done. You don't need to go back here. And I was kind of like sad about it. And also like, what an amazing gift for me to be part of that experience, to have the trees speak to me, to have them share this sacred song that no one had heard for thousands of years out loud, at least. I'm guessing I'm not the first or only person they tried to get to do this, but maybe I'm the only one who was willing to do it out loud, who's willing to like be weird, be the weird lady singing to the tree. And It was a really powerful experience, and I can still feel that those trees honor me. I feel like if I do go back to Cambodia, I will be known. The grid in Cambodia knows me because I did this service for it. And in exchange, it welcomes me. It knows that I'm there to give and not just to take. So that was the story of like a very intentional piece of grid work that I did, uh, that was extremely powerful. And again, I wouldn't have used that term at the time, but I knew I was there for the energy of the place. That's really all the grid is, the energy of the earth in that place. So a couple months ago, I went to Cozumel and I talked about this a little bit. I was called right away. I was looking for like other things to do on the island besides scuba diving, and there were these Mayan ruins, and I had the same kind of feeling in Cambodia. I was like, I need to go here. And I never got anything specific other than I need to go here. I need to be here. I need to be present in this space. I need to be energetically open and flowing in this space. And so we scheduled a trip to go to these Mayan ruins. It turned out it was a goddess of the moon and fertility. So this was a space that was essentially dedicated to the divine feminine, which now looking back doesn't surprise me and also still kind of gives me chills. And so we went to this space. I was with my husband and my sister and sister-in-law, and none of them are into the stuff that I'm in, but they were like, yeah, let's go see the place. And we got there and the tour guides came up and they're like, oh, let us take you on a tour. And I was like, no, this is not what we're here for. Like, we're not here for the like cerebral. I mean, I'm not sure that they just were there because I wanted to go essentially, and they were like willing to see the space. But I was like, I'm here for something much deeper than just knowing what happened in the space. And it actually felt like if I knew, like if I heard the stories of what happened, it would somehow diminish the energy of what I was there to do, which was in this case like just to be present. It was like just be present in this space, just be here. And it was very hot, and I was having the beginnings of this breakout of this hydrotic eczema on the bottom of my feet, which I did not know what it was at the time. But so I was barely walking. I was like limping around. It was really hot. And yet I could feel that there was a larger purpose for me being there. So the intention I had in that space was just to be to witness the energy of this place, because this is another place where like a lot of tourist people come through and they don't really understand the energy of what the specialness of this place is. The reason the Mayans built this temple here, they felt the power of this space. And there's these cenotes under the ground, these underground caves of water that they used as wells. And there was this hole in the ground that I just couldn't, I just stood there for a really long time. And so when I was in that space, we were just walking around and I was just being present. I was just like feeling the energy, and I was sending gratitude and love for the space itself, for the energy of the space, for the energy allowing me to be there, for this just feeling of kind of honoring. I just was honoring the energy of that space because I felt like, luckily, it's pretty heavily touristed, but it's not as busy as some places, and it still has a lot of energy. It hasn't been completely zapped, and I was honoring that. And by honoring that, I was helping. I woke something up, like literally. By honoring that, I woke something up. So I was in the space. I was just honoring the energy. I was just feeling it. I took some pictures. I was with my family. I was also really hot and limping around. And so we stayed for a while. And I just felt like I was meant to be there and be present and just honor this energy. And it was right around the full moon, interestingly. And it might have been on the full moon that we went, actually. And I went back, and that night, everyone else had kind of gone to bed, and I was just sitting out by the pool looking at the full moon. And I heard this voice say, I am the great mother. The great mother is awakening. She is yours, something like that. I actually wrote it in my social media, the exact message, in the moment. I posted it in the Spiritual Awakening Sanctuary too. I am the great mother is awakening. She is ready. She is yours, something like that. And it was this like deep rumbling voice. And it was this really powerful, it was like the rising of the divine feminine. And it was one of those moments where I knew that no matter how difficult this transition is that we're in on all levels of being, socially, politically, energetically, all of this transition of what we are calling 3D to 5D, it's going to be okay, because something is awake that cannot be put back to sleep. That was the feeling I got. And it felt like in that particular place, she was waiting to be honored in a way that like aroused her, that woke her up fully. She was kind of in a dormant space. And so that's a really good example of, like, I didn't go to Cozumel because I was called to that space specifically. I went there to scuba dive with my family. And then I felt like I'm like, there's something more I need to look for here. When as soon as I saw the ruins, I was like, oh yeah. And it was the same as the trees in Cambodia. It was just like, I need to be in this space. And it wasn't as detailed, or it wasn't as specific, like they need to hear my song. It was just like, I need to be here, and I need to be honoring the presence of the energy in this space. And it woke something up. So those are both two pretty kind of powerful examples of grid work. I think we always have the opportunity to do grid work by being present and honoring the land that we're on, the space that we're in. I've always had a really strong connection to rocks, and like I have rocks everywhere, I have crystals everywhere, I have rocks everywhere, and they are sentient. I mean, when I was in Phoenix, that was 2002, because it was when I had decided to go to massage school, and I was looking for schools. We were on this assignment in Phoenix when my husband was an x-ray tech. Every single day I went to this park and I hiked up to this rock who spoke to me. That was the first time that I really had an experience of communicating with the land in that way. And like, I was like, what's your name? And he's like, call me Joel. So that was like a family joke, Joel the Rock. But I went almost every day, and I sat and I watched the sunset, and it was winter, so the weather was beautiful. And I just received so much by being in the presence of this rock, this ancient rock, and, asked a lot of questions and stuff. And that was a form of grid work. So essentially, anytime you're in a space with that gratitude, with that honoring the energy, honoring the people who came before, especially the indigenous people who lived in a state of honoring. That is what we are meant to do. We are meant to be honoring the earth. And not only are we not honoring the earth, we're treating the earth like garbage, like literally dumping garbage on the earth. And she is not going to stand for that. And what's going to happen if enough of us wake up, is that we can move back to these ways of not just coexisting, of exchange, of giving and receiving, of this beautiful relationship of love and honor and respect in both directions. And the worst case scenario is that we don't wake up and the earth just purges. She just purges us. And I've known that for a long time too, that periodically she's done that throughout history. It's usually a pandemic of some sort, but not always. Look at all of the natural disasters and the way that things are ramping up and getting more intense. That is her taking care of herself. And when I was communicating with her a while ago, I don't know if it was around the time I was in Cozumel or earlier, she basically said, I don't like to have to do this because it hurts me too. Like when I destroy an area with fire, it hurts me, and I will do whatever I have to take care of myself. And she should, because she is her own being, and we are here at her discretion. And it would be wise for us, not again, just to understand that we need to coexist, but that we need to honor her, that there's a huge amount of wisdom in the earth, in nature. It's one of the only places. I was just listening to the podcast where I talked about the importance of why spiritual awakening matters. I think nature is one of the only places in our like super commercialized and consumerism society where people still find that connection to their spirituality, because it's there to be found. And if we don't preserve that, if we don't honor that, it's not going to end well for us. We keep thinking it's not going to end well for her, for the earth. It's not going to end well for us because we are here at her whim, at her discretion. She has a lot more power than we do. So that's my opinion, or sort of what I would, the way I think of grid work. Again, not, I don't necessarily use that term, but it's really important. And wherever you are, you can offer things to the energy of the space you're in. You know, clearing your home is an offering because it's sitting on land, right? Offering things, honoring the moon cycle, honoring the full moon, especially when she's out there. I went out so hot, I could barely stand outside even at 10 o'clock at night, but I went out on the full moon the other night. And I always try to spend some time and with gratitude and just saying thank you. Thank you for shining down on us, because that moon goddess, she is that goddess of movement and fertility and water, and she guides the tides, and she and the earth are bound to each other in a beautiful relationship of this kind of give and take. And the more that we can honor the land, first of all, we're honoring ourselves because we're part of the land. And it also, there's a really big opening. When I got that message about the Great Mother Awakening, like, I was just crying. I was just sitting by myself by this pool looking at the moon and just like crying, because it was such a powerful message. It was such a potent message. And again, all I did was show up. That's kind of what grid work is. All I did was show up and honor the energy, and it allowed something to move, and it allowed me to see that, to be witness to that. And we've talked about how important it is to be witnessed. The earth wants to be witnessed too. Energy wants to be witnessed. And as we do that, we change the grid. And as we re-enliven, is the word that's coming through to me, as we re-enliven the grid, the earth has a chance to move energy in a way that serves her, and that can serve us if we are willing to allow her to serve us and stop trying to have dominion over her or subjugate her, which again, all of our systems are built on colonialism, subjugation, dominion, whatever word, power over. And the most powerful way to exist is power with. If we can have power with the earth, she has so much to give us. And grid work is a way to honor that, is a way to personally connect with that energy, with gratitude, with honor, and to experience the sacredness of the energy that is within and all around the earth, all of these different beautiful energies. It's why we're in the 3D, because at the root, all energy is unconditional love. But in this 3D plane, we get to experience all the differentiations of this energy. The earth energy, that mycelial network, that richness, the fertility of like growth, and like having your hands in the dirt and just like seeing the flowers and the trees rise up out of that. The energy of light, of that angelic net, of the sun, which is part of that light that comes in, and the balance of the light and the dark, and the fact that in the physical reality, just because something's dark doesn't mean that it's bad. There is a way to be clear, expanded, and harmonious, and dark. Caves have really intense, powerful energy. It is an energy of darkness, but it is the energy of incubation, of growth, of germination. And because so much of our energy has been corrupted by this dominion, power over, colonialism, whatever word you want to use for it, subjugation, we have lost our understanding of the power of these energies. And there's a lot of fear in that. There's a lot of fear around that. And that's partly where our own shadow work comes in, of letting go of the corruption of the energy. It's not that dark energy is bad. It's the muddiness. It's the contraction. It's the discoherence, the corruption that's in that energy. So if you are enjoying the show, and if you are enjoying not just the topics, but you want to delve deeper into those, we would love to have you in the Spiritual Awakening Sanctuary. Today, we're going to do a powerful activation around waking up the grid in your specific area. And there's a reason I have that accessible only to people in that space, is because the work is really powerful and having support around that work is important. So in that space, you have access to communicate with like-hearted individuals. You will receive all of the episodes of the podcast, the bonus episodes, as well as the full episodes, and then the activations that go with every single episode. There are also some special perks, some discounts, some freebies, some additional sort of just bonuses that are my gift to you for being in the space with us. So you can go to paulataylorenergy.com. You can go to the link in the show notes. Join us, see if it's something that calls to you. There's never any pressure. You can always step away, but we'd love to have you at least try us out and share yourself with us. Be witnessed. Allow yourself to be witnessed and to witness others. That's a big part of that space. Have a beautiful rest of your day or evening. I will see you on the next episode of Wind Down Wednesdays. No.